So I thought I'd just make a short video on how to describe a fullback's decision making in your scout reports. So it's one of the crucial factors of any player, but how do you use that specifically with a fullback? What decisions does a fullback typically have to make? So with a fullback's decision making, they need to make defensive decisions with the following: marking. We'll look at some phrases for marking. Leaving their position. They need to decide whether they're going to leave their position or stay in their position. They need to then make decisions with positioning and repositioning. Where are they going to occupy? Which space they're going to occupy? Are they going to stay in the defensive line? They're going to get out the defensive line. And then finally, the timing, the moment to spring forward and attack. So let's have a look at some phrases that you can use. So you could say stay or go. So a defender, a fullback, needs to decide whether they're going to stay in the defensive line, whether they're going to go and get out to the attacker, the ball carrier, the receiver. Jump or leave position. So this is a little bit more aggressive. Are they going to jump out to the ball carrier, which means quickly leave the defensive line and pressure? Or they're going to leave the position as well. Get out to the defender, get out to the attacker. Are they going to get out quickly to the player with the ball? Are they going to go and close them down? Or are they going to stay in their position? And then finally, knowing the man to pick up. So they could have multiple runners around them, and they need to know which man to pick up. They may need to choose and then change as well. So we'll look at some phrases, how you can use that. First, let's look at some examples of this player here, JP Sherman, and we'll see how you can use these phrases in real time. Follow the right back. I will just highlight him here. He's at the top of the screen here. So as play settles for the opposition and they get an offense going, you can see that he just drops into the defensive line just to cover that player. Now, he's got three players approaching on this left-hand side. So he's got some decisions to make. Let's see what he does. So firstly, he's got the ball carrier coming towards him. Now, he can decide whether to step out, leave the defensive line, and close down the ball carrier, put some pressure. You could also use the phrase jump out, which is when they aggressively jump out of the defensive line and press. Of course, if he does that, he's going to leave some space. So let's see what he does. So he initially started to jump out, and then he actually just dropped back into the defensive line. So he actually stayed, you could probably say, which I think was a good decision, because if he'd have moved out, that left winger then has space to get in behind. The other thing I think it's done is his decision to initially step out, jump out, caused the ball carrier to hesitate. So now the ball carrier has moved forward but hasn't really gained any yards or space. So I'll play a little bit more and we can see here that it's a bad touch from the winger. But now the defender, the fullback, is in a lot more control. He's not as vulnerable as he was, and that is because he made two quick decisions. He jumped out, but then he stayed back in quickly. And now he's got an overlap to deal with. He doesn't go towards the overlapping player. Instead, he just holds his position. And the ball is going to come back round, and he'll have another decision to make. So you can see here that the number 10 has just drifted into this half space, but the wide player is holding the width. So the fullback has another decision. Does he jump out and pick up? So pick up is to quickly mark a player. Does he pick up the player that's just dropped in the half space? Or does he hold his position? Does he stay in the defensive line and then wait for the winger to come in? So he actually does pick up the number 10, but he waits for the player on the ball to start to make the pass, and then he holds and drops back into the defensive line, which means that he's now not allowing the winger to get that space in yards on him, but he's going to be faced with another decision. So the number 10 has moved back into the half space, so he's got two players. Does he stay with the overlapping player, the winger, or does he go to the player that's drifted into the half space? So he decides to stay with the overlapper, which I think is a good decision again, because there's two players here that could probably quickly pick up the player that's going to make the cross. So that's example one. Now let's look at the second example. So the fullback's just dropped into the defensive line here. He's tracking this winger. He's picked up the winger. Now he's going to have a bit more movement around him. You can see that the fullback starts to make an overlap. Players in front of him, so he can see all the movement. But then a player is going to drift into this space here now. So as you can see, he's now going to be faced with a decision. Does he stay in the defensive line here? Does he go out to the winger? Does he go out to the number 10 that's drifted into this half space? So you can see he's got a big decision to make here. He holds his position. So I think this is quite smart. If he went to the winger, then the number 10 can come inside and turn. If he goes to the winger, to the number 10, then the winger has space to activate a cross. So he just holds his position. He stays in the defensive line. You can see he's constantly looking. Now he's going to be met with another decision. There's a player making an underlap. So does he pick up the underlap player, or does he wait? So he actually decides that he's going to jump out to the winger and close off this passing angle that was possible in the channel. And the opposition need to go back. And again, he just stays in the defensive line, waits for a moment to make a decision. And now you can see that he's just starting to jump out to the receiver, and he's able to close him down and win the ball. So those are some examples of decision making for a fullback. Let's look at how you can use those in phrases. So the first phrase that we used in the examples was to stay or to go. So we're going to look at a good decision, and then we're going to look at a poor decision and how you can use this phrase. So you could say he reads attacks well and knows when to stay in the defensive line or when to go to the opponent. So when they're able to do that well and they can make that decision with impulsiveness, that's a good sign. So you could say he reads attacks well and knows when to stay in the defensive line or go to the opponent. If you wanted to shorten that down, you could just say knows when to stay in the line or go out to the opponent if you're using it as a shorter phrase. Poor decision-making example would be that he struggled to read and time situations well by going to the ball carrier and leaving the man out wide in space. So if you see a defender who just quickly goes out to the ball carrier and doesn't think about what he's leaving behind, this might be a phrase that you want to use. Simultaneously, they may just stay in the defensive line when they need to go to the opponent. The next phrase we're going to look at is to jump out. So you use this with pressing. It's when a player leaves the pressing or the defensive structure, to press. So a good decision-making example could be that he knows when to jump out and press the ball carrier or the receiver. So he knows the right moment to go and stop the ball carrier, just hold them up maybe. Or he knows the moment when to go and jump out to the receiver. So he's waiting for the moment for that pass to be made. As soon as there's a trigger, he goes and he stops the receiver from moving into a dangerous area. A poor decision example would be he failed to jump out at the right moment and allowed opponents too much space to attack. So if he jumps out too late, too early, or doesn't at all, then you can use this phrase, and you'll know it because they'll just allow the offensive players too much space. The ball carrier is able to come too far forward, or the winger has a lot of space in behind. The next phrase we're going to look at, or the last one, is knowing which man to pick up. So in these examples, you saw lots of players rotating and moving into the space around the fullback. So he needs to know which one to pick up. Does he go with this player? Does he go with the one that's standing still? Or does he just hold his position and stay calm? So a good decision making example would be that he had a lot of opponents rotating around him and he managed it well by picking up the right opponent, maybe at the right time, to prevent them space. So a player moved into the wide position and he just left them because he was more concerned about picking up the man in the half space. So he decided to do that. The wide player wasn't able to get space either. So it's a good decision. Alternatively, maybe he goes to the player in the half space, but leaves the wide player with a lot of space to make a cross. And then the ball goes to the winger. And you can see it was a bad decision. So a poor decision-making example would then be he struggled to pick up the right opponent with a lot of movement around him, which led to some dangerous crosses. So like I said, if he picked up the wrong man, you'll know because the other player will have a lot of space in a more dangerous area. So another example could be that he goes to the wide player, gets a little bit too close, and then the player in the half space now has that underlapping area space to move into. So that's another example that you could use. So those are some phrases you can use in your scout reports to describe a fullback's decision-making ability. If you'd like to write impressive, highly detailed scout reports in English, then consider taking the Professional Scout Reporting course. This is the course that gives you all of the key explanations that help you describe a player's ability, their characteristics, their physical stature, and any other key aspect that is required to add into your reports to make it cohesive, concise, and a very strong, descriptive, detailed report of the player. So if you'd like to take this course, please see the link I've left in the comments and you can have a look and see if it's for you. So thank you for watching. Bye.